Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on the role of learners, teachers, and materials in the silent way method. I hope and expect by the end of this session, you would have some understanding of the role of the learners and of the teachers as it is expected to be in the silent way method. And you would also have some understanding of the nature of the materials that are used in this method. Well, at the outset, I would talk about the role of the learner. Well, the learner is expected to develop independence. Now, this is one of the key expectations from the learner. Learner autonomy and learner responsibility are the key factors when it comes to the role of the learner. The learner is not expected to be very much dependent, for instance, on the teacher. What do we mean by independent learners? Independent learners are the learners who are aware of the language that they are learning, who are aware of the learning process, and they must depend on their own resources. They are the learners who can use the knowledge of their own language to open up some things in the new language. So, they are self-motivated, they are self-aware, and they can take their knowledge of the first few words in the new language and figure out additional words by using that knowledge. So, they are not only keen and active, but also they are active enough, they are competent enough to move on to the next step of language learning when they have learned a few words of the target language. The absence of correction and repeated modeling from the teacher requires the students to develop inner criteria. Now, what does this inner criteria mean? Since in the silent way method, the role of the teacher is very limited and restricted, and he or she is expected to be silent most of the times, so not a lot of feedback comes from the teacher. So, how does the process of correction take place? It is a process of self-correction, the inner criteria that the student himself or herself judges or evaluates and tries to correct himself or herself. And through this process of correcting himself or herself, the learner tries to make generalizations, reaches his or her own conclusions, and thus also formulates whatever rules he or she thinks he or she needs in the process of learning. So it is quite autonomous kind of learning where, the learner is very, very independent. Learners have only themselves as individuals and the group to rely on, and so must learn to work cooperatively rather than competitively. So, this is a process of group support where each learner, each pair supports in the process of learning. It's less a competition and more, a cooperation. As far as the role of the teacher is concerned, teacher silence is perhaps the unique and for many traditionally trained language teachers, the most demanding aspect of the silent way. Because in most of the language teaching methods, the role of the teacher is central, the teacher speaks a lot, the teacher controls everything. So perhaps one of the biggest challenges of the silent way would also be for the teacher, to keep silent. Stavik defines the silent way teacher's tasks as to teach, A, and B, to test, and C, to get out of the way. So, to teach, to test, and then, to get out of the way, to give some kind of independence to the learner to move forward. By teaching is meant the presentation of item once, typically using non-verbal clues to get across meanings. What is testing? Testing follows immediately and might better be termed elicitation and shaping of student production, which again is done in a silent way as it is possible by the teacher. And finally, the teacher silently monitors learners' interactions with each other and may even leave the room while learners struggle with their new linguistic tools. So it gives a kind of freedom to the learners to struggle with, to experience, and thus to have mastery of the new linguistic items. The teacher uses gestures, charts, etc. to elicit and shape students' responses in this process. The teacher likes the complete The teacher, like the complete dramatist, does certain things, writes a script, chooses the props, sets the mood, models the action, designates the players, and is critic for the performance. But the main performance is to be given by the actors, which are the students. As far as the materials in the silent way method are concerned, they are a set of colored rods, color-coded pronunciation, vocabulary, wall charts, a pointer, reading or writing exercises, and all of these are used to illustrate the relationships between the sound and the meaning in the target language. The materials are designed for manipulation by the students as well as by the teacher independently and cooperatively. What does it mean? It means that the learners can be a part of designing these materials as well. The pronunciation charts, called fiddles, have been devised for a number of languages and contain symbols in the target language for all of the vowels and consonant sounds of the language. And the symbols are color-coded according to the pronunciation, and they are available as a kit for the teacher to use. The color rods are used to directly link words and structures with their meanings in the target language, thereby avoiding translation into the native language. The rods vary in length from 1 to 10 centimeters, and each length has a specific color. So the teacher can use these rods as cues. The rods may be used for naming colors, for size comparison, to represent people, build floor plans, constitute a roadmap, etc. So it depends upon the creativity of the teacher, how the teacher wants to use them. Use of the rods is intended to promote inventiveness, creativity, and interest in forming communicative utterances on the part of the students, as well as they move from simple structures to the complex structures. But through the whole process of using these materials, the teacher's role again is very, very restricted, and he or she provides the materials, designs the materials, and gives the props, but mainly the actors or the respondents or the users of the language are the learners of the target language.